Hi, class. So I want to talk to you today about week 6, which is going to be the transportation sector. And I think for my money, transportation sector is going to be the hardest nut to crack. All right? Because what we have to figure out how to do is take a bunch of different independent vehicles that have all different places to go and a bunch of different mechanisms for moving not just people but goods across the globe and figure out how to do it somehow more cheaply and more efficiently within the confines of what kind of supply chains and energy infrastructure we have. Now, one thing we can do on energy in Rhode Island, if we really want to move towards a carbon free energy future, and maybe you don't want to, but if you think you do, one of the easy things we can do, and that we are moving forward doing at the present moment, is build out offshore wind capacity. Another thing we can do is perhaps buy additional hydro from Hydro Quebec, where they've built an absolute ton of dams in the Northwoods. We're going to need some sort of a transmission line in order to move more of that down, but that's a possibility. If you're worried about thermal, maybe once you get that done, you can start shifting people increasingly onto things like heat pumps, get them off of old fuel oil, and eventually maybe have people transfer off of natural gas, though that's maybe less pressing than fuel oil. And all along the way, you can imagine ways to do this, but it gets really hard when you try to imagine it in transportation, right? Like, really pretty hard. Electric cars are pretty expensive. And even if you don't think they're pretty expensive because you have a good chunk of money yourself, um, you got to realize that there's a lot of people in this country who don't live in homes with garages. They don't live in homes with even necessarily parking spots. If they do have one, it's a landlord's house. They're not going to let them install chargers or whatnot. It's not going to be easy to take, a massive chunk of, especially the low end of the automobile market and transfer it over. Now you can do bus fleets maybe easier. Maybe there's more we can do with train. Maybe we can get more people using transit, more people using uh, non-automobile forms of transportation. But when you get right down to it, the number one biggest source of capital in the United States of America is real estate, it's land, it's property. And as long as the homes and the streets and everything are scattered around the way they kind of are now, I don't think cars are going to disappear anytime in the very immediate future. So, that being said, what to do? Recently, President Biden and the Democrats in the Senate made a relatively big gamble on electric cars. It's not a massive one. They're not spending a heck of a lot more than what the old tax credits were like in previous times. So maybe that's one way forward. Like I said, there's limitations with electric cars. Now, some of those limitations might have been overcome in other countries. And so, one of the things I'm going to ask you to check out when you get a chance is to check out the little video about China and what they call city cars. Because one of their solutions has been to create a very small car that goes maybe 45 miles an hour max. It's a thing. I probably would be a little bit squished up in it. Um, but it would get you to and fro. It does it very efficiently, and those things can sell for as cheap as about $5,000 new, which starts to get to the point where okay, swapping out batteries, finding other ways to charge them, might be actually economical. It's much more difficult to ask people to figure out where they're going to come up with $40,000 for even the buy-in on a subcompact right now. So there might be a bit of a future there, with something maybe not meant for highway speeds and maybe not meant for every state highway or state road, but something that can kind of get you around from place to place. If you're going to be going at, maybe under 40 or something like that, where, crash standards maybe don't have to be quite as high, but we're a long way off from authorizing anything like that in the United States. I just want you to see that it's possible. Um, there are limits. There are limits to how fast you can turn over electric vehicles from ICE vehicles, and there's limits to how much people will tolerate. California looks like it's going to push that envelope and try to stop selling all new gasoline powered vehicles starting 2035. Um, Maybe we'll follow suit in Rhode Island at some point. I'm not sure. Uh, But if we're going to get somewhere, right, if you're going to care about the three sort of things we care about in this class, which you can rank them and order them kind of however you want, but roughly we're always caring about environmental benefit, we're always caring about energy affordability, and we're always caring about, um, you know, energy security and sustainability, right? We want secure, sustainable access to energy for the United States of America. We want it to be affordable for the American public to be able to get around, heat, do what they need to do. And we also want it to have environmental benefits, or at least try to do the least environmental damage possible along the way. And how you weight those against each other is up to you. How you rank order them is up to you. How much importance we should give to each of the three is up to you. But I think always those three goals should be in our mind, and sometimes they come into conflict with each other. So we're just going to have to try to work that out amongst ourselves. Maybe you have some cool transportation ideas you want to post in the forums this week. Maybe you think there's sort of better ways around our current form of plane travel. Maybe we can get more people riding trains. Small changes they've made in cargo, like even just adding the high altitude kites to the big, sort of Cape Max and really, really large cargo ships to sort of take some of the pressure off their fuel engines could make a difference. Maybe nuclear. Somehow plays into transportation, at least in terms of those very large goods moving ships. It's possible. We talked a little bit about nuclear in the electric section. It could have some sort of a role in the transportation section. But I think maybe, at least in the immediate future, it's going to be limited. So we're going to have to, figure out what we can do. There are a few other alternatives. You can look at the Toyota Mirai, which is actually rolling around some parts of California right now, which is a hydrogen-powered Toyota. You might find that interesting. They're actually for sale. They're quite expensive too. The only thing that comes out of the tailpipe there is water, but then you have to create the hydrogen. Now, how do you create that at scale? How do you create it green? There's a lot of work being done on that, and there's a lot of grants being done on that, and maybe we'll get to there sooner rather than later. To me, if you ask me right now, I think the Japanese and the Europeans are actually ahead of where Americans are on hydrogen. I think the Chinese are ahead of where Americans are on electric cars. And so we're not exactly at the bleeding edge of this stuff. Maybe we are in terms of like very high end electric luxury automobiles, but in terms of sort of usable stuff for regular everyday to day people, we're really kind of behind. And whether you think that's good, bad, or otherwise, I think America's just going to have to pick a direction in the relatively near future, and maybe that direction looks a lot like the F-150 Lightning, right? Like maybe Americans are going to insist on having large cars, but they'd be fine as long as they can have an F-150 that's electric, and maybe that will end up being fine as we update the electric grid. So I'm not here, like I said, to tell you what to think. I'm just here to give you food for thought and kind of aim you down the right path on how to think about this stuff. So I hope you spend a while thinking about transportation this week. I look forward to what you have to say. Next week, we're going to finish up talking about the future. Look forward to seeing you then.